All right, let's dive into a really cool historical puzzle today, one that comes to us from 11th century Iran. We're going to take a word that we all think we know, missionary, and watch how the life of one incredible person just completely shatters our expectations of what that word can mean.
So, when I say the word missionary, what picture pops into your head? For most of us, right? It's probably someone traveling through the countryside, preaching to local communities, trying to win converts one person at a time. But what if that image is just totally, completely wrong for this specific time and place?
You see, when we look at the historical sources from medieval Iran, we get this really weird contradiction. They talk about these religious figures called da'is, which means callers, but they're described in two totally opposite ways. Sometimes, they're these humble, saintly preachers out in remote villages, and other times, they're brilliant, super elite intellectuals, hobnobbing with rulers in royal courts. So, which is it? The humble saint or the slick court strategist? How can both be true?
Well, to solve this puzzle, we have an amazing guide, a man named Al-Muayyad fi al-Din al-Shirazi. He was an 11th century Ismaili da'i who, and this is the incredible part, actually wrote his own memoir. It's like a personal account from 1,000 years ago, and it is our key to figuring out what was really going on.
Okay, so if we look at his career, you can see right away that his moves were anything but random. His own memoir shows that he didn't just wander the countryside. No, he made very specific, very deliberate choices. He starts out in this province called Fars, gets tangled up in political drama, and gets exiled. And then get this, he rises all the way to the top, becoming the head of the entire mission based out of Cairo. But it's that early work back in Iran that really pulls back the curtain on his true strategy.
So what was this grand strategy? Well, he wasn't just spreading the word to anyone who would listen, he was going straight for the jugular. He was targeting the very foundations of the local ruler's power, what we can think of as the pillars of sovereignty. He was aiming right for the economic and military heart of the entire kingdom. His very first big move outside the capital city tells you everything you need to know. He didn't head for some quiet, remote village. Nope. He went straight to the city of Fassa. And Fassa was no sleepy backwater. It was a massively important strategic hub.
Fassa was the perfect target. Why? Because it was home to three essential pillars of the ruler's power. First, a huge military garrison full of elite soldiers. Second, one of the kingdom's only royal mints, the place they make the money to pay those soldiers. And third, a state-run factory that produced these prestigious luxury textiles, which were a huge symbol of royal authority. Basically, if you controlled Fassa, you had a knife to the kingdom's throat.
And this wasn't some big secret either. The historical records are pretty clear that everyone at the time knew that Fassa's garrison was the key to controlling the whole region. So Al-Muayyad's choice was completely calculated. He was going exactly where the power was.
And we see the exact same logic with his next target. He goes after the city of Ahwaz, which he himself describes in his memoir as a gathering point for the Daylamis, those same elite soldiers.
The pattern here is just impossible to miss. Ahwaz was another major power center. It was like a second capital city, it had one of the busiest mints in the entire kingdom, and it was a massive hub for trade. Al-Muayyad was systematically going after the ruler's most critical assets, one by one.
So the picture is becoming crystal clear, right? Al-Muayyad's mission was not about converting the general population. It was a surgical, highly focused campaign to gain influence over the military elites who were packed into these economic power centers. And why? To put the squeeze on the ruler, to create a threat he couldn't ignore.
Now, to really understand just how radical Al-Muayyad's approach was, we can actually compare him to another religious figure who was active in the very same region at the very same time. And the contrast, well, it's pretty stunning. So this is Sheikh Murshid, a Sufi holy man. His mission was the polar opposite of Al-Muayyad's. He was all about building a local community from the ground up. He built lodges, mosques, even set up food banks for the poor. He was creating real, lasting social institutions for ordinary people.
When you put their playbooks side by side like this, the difference is just night and day. Al-Muayyad's method was top-down and political. Target the elites, pressure the ruler, and what you get is a pretty fragile political coalition. Sheikh Murshid's was bottom-up and social. Target the local community, build institutions, and you get a religious influence that lasts for centuries. These are two completely different ideas of what a mission even is.
So now we can see Al-Muayyad for what he really was. He wasn't a missionary in the way we usually think of the word. Not at all. He was something much, much closer to a modern political operative. I mean, think about it. His mission wasn't primarily spiritual, it was political. His goal was a very specific political outcome, and the way he went about it was by targeting the actual systems of power, the mints, the garrisons, the state factories, not by trying to win the hearts and minds of the masses. You can actually break his whole method down into a clear four-step playbook. 1. Identify your opponent's key centers of power. 2. Infiltrate them by winning over the important people inside. 3. Exploit the social tensions that are already there. And 4. Use that leverage to threaten the ruler's power and force him to do what you want.
And what was the ultimate prize? What was the whole point of this incredibly sophisticated operation? It was pure geopolitics. He was trying to force the local Buwayid ruler to break his allegiance with one caliph, the one in Baghdad, and instead pledge his loyalty to the rival Fatimid caliph in Cairo, the very same organization that Al-Muwayyad would one day lead.
So if you were to chart out his priorities, it would look exactly like this. Trying to convert the masses? Barely on his radar. Building grassroots community institutions? Nope, not his job. Gaining influence over the military and economic elite? That was everything. That was the whole ball game.
And this really is the whole point. Al-Muwayyad's story teaches us that a simple, neat little label like missionary can hide a much more complicated and frankly more interesting reality. Behind what looks like a religious movement, you can often find a hardcore game of power, strategy, and economics.
And the most amazing thing of all, we know all of these details with such stunning clarity because of one single surviving document, his own memoir. It's just incredible. A single voice from the past let us decode a political playbook that was hidden in plain sight for almost 1,000 years.
Which of course leaves us with one last big question to think about. Knowing what we know now about Al-Muwayyad, you just have to wonder how many other events in history that we've neatly labeled as religious conflicts were actually, deep down, really just struggles over money, control, and power. Thanks for digging into this with me today.